What is an eating disorder in an animal? I mean,
Right.
how would that present?
So, so just so you know, we took a very skeptical position. We felt for this book to be scientifically credible, we wanted to be extremely skeptical.
Right.
And both of us came out of the educational background of do not anthropomorphize.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, that's like a scientific intellectual crime. So, but we wanted to be consistent with our methodology, so we said, do animals get eating disorders? Do they get anorexia nervosa? Do they get bulimia nervosa? And we were frankly embarrassed almost to ask, like it seemed silly. But time and time again, we found that, for example, on farms, in pig farms, there's a syndrome that farmers know about called thin sow syndrome or sow wasting syndrome. Mm-hmm. And a pig, when transitioning from nursing to being autonomous, there's a social stress during that period when the hierarchy is being determined. And once in a while, one of the pigs will respond to the stress by reducing her eating and then stopping her eating. And her hair gets very thin, which happens with human anorexics. Interestingly, sometimes there's more activity also, which you see in human anorexics.
And is it always a female? Is it always a sow?
It's sometimes a young pig. So it's either happens when they're transitioning into the herd or for the mom pigs when they're weaning.
Okay.
Kind of those vulnerable times.
And sometimes they actually do die. They starve themselves to death. And actually there was a collaboration between an agricultural scientist and a psychiatrist who noticed that probably 10 years ago.
And we've seen pictures of it. You'll see a perfectly healthy pig. They're from the same litter, perfectly healthy plump pig, and then next to it is its much skinnier sibling.
Right.
And then on the bulimia side, there are great apes and some marine mammals who, when they're stressed, will induce regurgitation. They push on their stomachs, and it's forced vomiting. They actually lap up their own vomit. It's called regurgitation and reingestion. They do it compulsively as a kind of self-soothing phenomenon.
But that's where it was interesting too to take the animal who's in more of a zoo environment or maybe a more domesticated livestock environment, and then look for similar behaviors in the wild. And we found, again, looking to the terminology that a veterinarian or wildlife biologist would use, we found this term defensive regurgitation, which I just thought was so interesting as that you would use this as a way to protect yourself. And what would that mean to a psychiatrist or a therapist treating somebody with bulimia nervosa if you thought of it as vomiting to protect yourself?
And do psychiatrists approach bulimia nervosa that way, or?
As far as we can tell, there's been very little, if no, kind of contact connection, because I don't think we've ever thought about mental illness as having a component outside of the prefrontal cortex. By even asking the question, do these behaviors connect to human behaviors, we expand phylogenetically who we think we are, who the other patients are.
Right.
So no, there haven't been. We are really excited. Some psychiatrists who've heard about the project have invited us to write for their journals, and we hope the conversation continues.